Now, Romelu Lukaku has been at the centre of things for Inter since his big money move from Manchester United. He was involved tonight in their 1-1 draw with Slavia Prague that opened up their group, and has also been, unfortunately, at the receiving end of some rather dodgy treatment on the racist front from Cagliari fans in particular, from the dodgy comment from a pundit on Italian TV as well. To fill us in more on all of that, joining us on the line this evening is Paddy Agnew from Italy. Paddy, you're very welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much, and good evening to you and all our listeners.
Indeed, thank you very much for joining us. We kind of, we'll touch on the match first of all. Inter opening up their Champions League campaign with the 1-1 draw with Slavia Prague. We were watching this one outside earlier on. Slavia played some really good stuff, and Inter were kind of lucky to salvage a draw in the end.
Absolutely, I thought it was a poor performance from Inter, and doesn't augur well for Italian football if you think that Inter are on top of the table here, although, has to be said, we've only played 3 league games. I thought, well, it's a fact that Italian clubs often don't perform well in September. They're a bit behind everybody else. They don't start the season as early as everybody else. And I thought, the visitors at the San Siro tonight must have been very disappointed because they probably deserved to win that game.
Yeah, they were playing some really good stuff, but we've often seen that Italian sides do happen to play their way in. They've got a shorter pre-season, start the season later. We'll imagine the Inter, as the season goes on, will be okay, but it's a very tricky group they have when you consider who else is up against them in Borussia Dortmund and Barcelona waiting in the other leg. Now, they might actually do them a favour because they're cancelling each other out tonight at the Westfalenstadion. Dortmund 0, Barcelona 0 is the latest score with about 23 minutes to go in that one. But they're very tricky games for Antonio Conte to navigate, and you kind of figure that, I don't want to say that there's been a hair trigger in terms of managers at the San Siro for Inter, but as successful as Conte has been, he really needs to get off to a solid start here, particularly in Europe.
Well, until tonight, he has got off to a solid start because to find themselves, okay, it's 3 days, but they've won the first 3 games in the league. Nobody else has done that already in Italy. So that's a good start. But that good start is when he's blotted the copybook tonight. All I would say to you is that, if you had to, the current school of Italian coaches is very good, and Conte's one of the best. And I wouldn't write him off just yet. I think he is capable of. He showed it with Italy in the European Championships in France a couple of years ago. That with a team of relatively, by Italian standards anyway, relatively ordinary players, he actually got a very good performance out of them. And he's got some useful players in the current Inter squad. You would think that he will be able to fashion them into something that will challenge the Juventus domination.
He's kind of given himself 2 project players when you consider what he's bought from Manchester United in the close season, getting Lukaku over, and the job in his hands now is to try and rebuild Alexis Sanchez into the player that we saw before he went to Manchester United, where things absolutely crumbled for him, and some of that we have to concede was of his own making. But with the right manager, and you kind of would hope from Sanchez's point of view, because on his day he's a great player, that Conte can build these players up again, and if he happens to do that, they can be quite the formidable force.
Oh yeah, I think so. I think they've got good players all through the park, but the question is, who's actually the leader of the team? Who's the guy who does the Roy Keane midfield, picks up the ball, he gets onto the ball, he shouts at people, he tells people what to do, where it's going on. There doesn't appear to be that player there yet, and the biggest problem with Inter is that they spent the last 8 months arguing about the future of the Argentine striker Icardi, and that created all sorts of hassles and disagreements in the dressing room. A lot of his teammates got very pissed off with him. So Conte's got to work on their heads as well as their bodies.
I want to bring Damien Delaney in here as well. He's got a question for you, Paddy.
Hi, Paddy, how are you?
Yeah. Hi, Damien.
Good. Listen, I got a quick question about Inter's owners. What's the situation there with them? Because I thought it was quite telling today when Slavia Prague scored, the first shot was cutting straight to Inter's owners. So, as someone who's been on the receiving end of an Italian owner at QPR, Flavio Briatore, am I right in saying that those guys are interfering, or are they nice fellas?
Damien, I would think they're, compared to Flavio Briatore, I'd say they're quite nice fellas, these guys. What I mean is, I think their intentions, in as much as you can say it's about anybody who buys a football club, their intentions are good. They're not in it just to make money. They're in it to obviously promote themselves, promote their own multinational company, Sunning. But they are genuinely interested.
But are they interfering, or will they let Conte just crack on with the job? No,
no, they're not interfering. They acknowledge that they don't know an awful lot of football. Frankly, they don't put it that way, but that's effectively what they're doing. And Conte can assure you, it's not the sort of guy who would take to being interfered with.
I was just curious, that was all, because I thought it was funny that they cut to them straight away.
Yeah. Oh, that's Italian TV producers.
Okay. Show the people with the money. They always are the ones who influence.
Yeah.
Paddy, I want to talk to you as well about this incident that Lukaku has found himself at the centre of, particularly after scoring that penalty away to Cagliari on the 1st of September. We all figured, given we all heard the chants, and we all heard what was aimed at him, and we all heard what he had to say in the press afterwards, that some punishment would flow from the FIGC, that, Cagliari would maybe face a partial stadium closure, would face a stadium closure, that there'd be some kind of fine. They seem to today have gotten away exceptionally lightly.
Yeah, they've got away scot-free, practically. There's a problem here. Is that we've talked about this on your program before, and I've talked about it in many programs. It's a problem of perception. The Italian perception of what is racism, what's racist abuse, and what is acceptable and what's not acceptable is a bit out of kilter with a lot of mainline Western thinking, frankly, at the moment. And people, when, for example, when Lukaku took that penalty, he was booed at, and there were monkey noises, monkey chants shouted at him in Cagliari. He expressed his dismay on his Instagram site, and if he did, the Inter fans, his own club, said, no, Lukaku, old son, you've got this wrong. That wasn't racism. That was just the way that people would shout at any player on an opposing team, which clearly isn't. Clearly isn't so. We know it was racism. End of story. But people in Italy and the authorities in Italy are slow to really grasp this particular bull by the horns. I mean, I'll put it to you another way. I was at about 10 years ago now at a 2-day seminar on racism football organised by the British Embassy here in Rome. And you had organisations like, Kick Racism Out of Football, people like that. And talking to some of those English guys, they said to me quite simply, talking to the guys in the Italian Football Federation, you get the impression that they haven't actually got it at all. And 10 years later, I'm not sure how much better it's got, I mean, this is a country where during his election campaign, a successful election campaign turned out to be for the Italian Football Federation, the president, 2 presidents back, he talked about having too many non-European players in Italian football in particular. And he said, you get some guys who, 3 weeks ago he was eating bananas in the jungle, and next week he's playing for Lazio. He actually said that. The guy went on to be elected as the president of the Football Federation.
That's like... That has a horrible resonance with what Luciano Passerani, Italian TV, pretty much he tried to praise Lukaku. The quote reads as he's trying to praise Lukaku, but ultimately comes out with the most horrible racist remark towards Lukaku. Again, it was another banana mention in this instance. Is it embedded in the culture over there? You spent more time over there than anybody else. Is it embedded in the culture? Is it something that you meet on a day-to-day basis? How welcoming are Italians generally to foreign nationals, to people of colour? Try and give us some kind of sense of what your experience of it is.
No, well, I'm not black, for a start. But yes, I mean, this is a country where one of the most important national political forces is the League, the Northern League as it used to be called, and they are openly xenophobic, openly racist. End of story. I mean, to my mind, they're openly xenophobic, racist, and neo-fascist. And that culture is not challenged enough. On the contrary, you have people willing to exploit it. But I mean, in the way that somebody like Farage and Boris Johnson exploit it in Britain, you know.
I was just going to say that there seems to be that parallel. Like you mentioned, that the Northern League, as they were, may have fed a lot of those prejudices and those chants towards players. And we've seen this correlation of Kick It Out, as you mentioned there, in their work in the UK. Have noticed a rise in the amount of cases of racist abuse towards players. We've heard Raheem Sterling have to come out quite publicly on a number of occasions to try and speak out against it. And it comes in lockstep with the rise of what can only be described as the far right in England as well. Once again, like we're seeing the Farages and the Brexit parties and the far right element, the Rees Moggs and Boris Johnsons. It seems like the society, the fans, are emboldened by what they see from outside of the stadiums and decide to bring that in.
I can't speak for other countries in detail, but that's absolutely the case in Italy. But I suspect that people like Le Pen in France and even Trump in America, although he doesn't get involved in football, fortunately. But I mean, it's part of a worldwide populist sovereignist wave, and part of the populist, the most potent populist card to play is the foreigner, the racist, the threat to your job. These guys are going to come and take your job.
But I also think that, in England, that there was this thing once I heard at the end of Crystal Palace about they were having a problem with members of I think they were called the English Defence League. Right? I mean, they were showing up at Selhurst Park, and there was I remember I went to a fans forum thing once, and they started talking about that. And I just think that these guys have always been there, but it's the Farages and all these Rees Moggs and all these have given these guys. Actually, hang on a minute, we can stick our head out the hole that we were in right now, and we're going to start showing up, and no one's going to say anything to us. That's probably the same in Italy. I think you've probably have similar type groups, right? I mean, that guy Passarani was it?
Passarani, yeah.
I mean, listen, he was probably hanging around with Mussolini. He was that old, So, I mean, it's mad.
Well, no, but you're absolutely right, Damien, about groups like that in Italy, because the Osservatorio, the Observatory of Italian Football, is a police-run sort of think tank. They have said on the record many, many times that extreme far-right groups target football fans, they target football clubs, they move in, and they're not interested in the football club, obviously, but they're interested in recruiting guys to, who one day they're on the terraces, another day they're out at a political demonstration for them, and it's absolutely systematic, and it's been responsible for a great deal of racist and violent behaviour in the last 10 years.
Is there an onus in the absence of a willingness to tackle this problem from the FIGC's point of view, the Italian Football Federation's point of view, given the lack of, to tackle any problem, you have to admit that there's a problem first, and that seems to be the Italian authorities' problem. Is it the job of UEFA to step in then and say, hey, listen, the way you're dealing with this is not good enough. You need to make X amount of changes. You need to have a set system of rules in place that if such and such happens, that such and such is the reaction, whether it's taking the players off the pitch or whether it's a partial stadium closure or a full stadium closure. Are there a gradient system of punishments that basically they need to have UEFA step in and say, listen, organise this better, you're going to face trouble?
I think UEFA are usually pretty reluctant to do that. I mean,
but does it not behoove them when you see the bumpers at Paddy on every Champions League programme saying give respect, get respect, etc., etc. Napoli have just taken the lead, by the way, at home to Liverpool through a penalty from Lorenzo Insigne. And when you see they have their anti-racism bumpers going into every ad, you would figure that it would tally that it would benefit them to have some sort of positive influence from on high to try and stamp this problem out. Yes,
it would. It would absolutely would. But they've got such a problem amongst their own football constituency, amongst not just the football fans but football club directors. They've got a lot of learning to do and a lot of catching up to do, and a hard line from UEFA won't necessarily solve the problem. It just make UEFA very unpopular with Italian fans.
Yeah, and the last thing UEFA probably needs from its own point of view is a popularity swing to the negative. I just want to touch, Paddy, before you go, because I saw an interesting stat that Juventus have been off the top of the table for the first time in pretty much a couple of years, given their result away to Fiorentina the other night in Serie A, scoreless draw for them. Maurizio Sarri, between his own personal illness and then the scoreless draw with La Viola, has had a kind of a bumpy start to life with Juventus.
Yeah, it has been far from ideal for him. But I mean, I keep thinking about Juventus. They won the title 8 years in a row. The law of statistics would say they can't win it a ninth time. For God's sake, lads. So maybe this is the year they aren't. You would like to think that both either Napoli or Inter could mount a serious challenge this year. And certainly, Sarri's slow start and the illness and the pneumonia look like they've been a bit of a gift to the opponents.
Paddy, don't mention the words 8 in a row and that being not enough, because it might give the Dublin footballers some ideas, and we could be facing another period of dominance for them, continuing on for another 3. Paddy Agnew, thank you so much for taking time out this evening to speak to us live from Italy. Hopefully we'll meet under better circumstances next time. We'll have more positive news to talk about other than events in Cagliari and from the FIGC board. But Paddy Agnew, for the moment, thank you very much.